It actually puts me in mind of one of those all-girls assemblies over which Sylvia and Kathleen Trend used to occasionally.
How can one sum up the life of a 99-year-old woman who throughout her long life made every second count? Here is a lady with a sharp wit, inherited from her mother Elizabeth Jacobs Ben, the wisdom of Solomon, inherited from her father Morris Ben, a very gracious woman who enriched the lives of so many. Together with her late husband Manny Gelman, she lived life to the fullest. Sylvia did not bear children, but became a matriarch to many individuals and groups. This lady is our aunt, our mentor, our inspiration, our Auntie Syl. Auntie Syl was born on the 17th of April 1919 in Melbourne, unusually in a hospital rather than an at-home birth. But at a young age, she had her tonsils removed on the dining room table at home. Sue and her family continue to dine on that very table to this day. Auntie Syl had an elder sister, Mari, who married Percy Whitner, and later in her teenage years adopted sister Peggy Greenberg, who married Jeff Solomon. We, the progeny of Mari and Peggy, were treated to the joys of childhood, growing up around the Bens, the Gelmans, the Whitners and the Solomons. It really could not have been any better. The best time for us was clearly around the Seder table, with Uncle Manny conducting the service and Auntie Syl doing the pantomimes of Dayenu. Then there were the slide nights that occurred after Auntie Syl and Uncle Manny's many trips abroad. It wasn't just the showing of the pictures, but a whole interesting story around each slide. No one fell asleep during these slideshows. Uncle Manny and Auntie Syl were made for each other. They married in 1950. It was a marriage made in heaven. They bounced off each other's ideas. They enjoyed cultural, educational and sporting pursuits together. Auntie Syl claimed in her memoirs that her life was divided into 3 parts. The first 20 years were the learning phase. Bell Street State School, then Rathdown Street State School, where she was dux of the school, and at the age of 14, Auntie Syl transferred to University High. The next 30 years were her teaching phase. At 17 years of age, Auntie Syl started as a student teacher with primary students. After a year at Melbourne Teachers College, she was sent to teach Years 7 and 8 science at Merbeen Central School near Mildura. Then to Wangaratta High to teach Year 9 and 10 maths and science, and then on to Witchyproof Higher Elementary School. Then, due to her father Moishe's ill health, it was back to Melbourne, and 6 years teaching in metropolitan schools. It was at Ivanhoe Central School that she taught geography to Rabbi Kippen's mother. Because she had married, she had to resign from teaching in the state school system. That anachronistic policy of the state government was to be a blessing for the new Jewish school, Mount Scopus College, where she became teacher and headmistress. She touched the lives of so many people. Her wisdom and knowledge were extended to all who would avail themselves of it. There are so many people in the Jewish community today who can say that they owe their success in life to one Sylvia Gelman. You couldn't walk down the street with Auntie Syl without bumping into one of her students. That was the case also when we attended Maccabi luncheons. Auntie Syl would remember their names, the names of the family members too. Even in her last years, she could recite information about past students, who they married, their parents, and in a lot of cases, the history of the family. Not gossip, but a genuine interest in other people. She had an amazing memory. The last 40 years were given to serving in non-government organisations, teaching and mentoring, establishing awards for students and teachers. If you consider where women are today, and there is still a long way to go, back in the 1970s, when Auntie Syl had retired from teaching and started her long career in NGOs, pushing for the rights and equality of women, she was well in advance of the times. Okay. Auntie Syl belonged to several organisations during her last 40 years, some of which are the National Council of Jewish Women, Victoria State and Australian national levels, the National Council of Women, Victoria State and Australian national levels, and the Council of Christians and Jews, just to name a few. In those organisations, she provided the wit and wisdom of Solomon that she inherited from her parents. Her relations with others were based on their qualities as individuals, without distinction of race, creed, economic or social status. The federal government showed the respect and appreciation in which the community held her by awarding Auntie Syl the MBE in 1981 and the AM in 2003. Graham and I were fortunate to attend that investiture and share her deserved recognition. She received the Jewish Community Council of Victoria's 2011 General Sir John Monash Award, and in 2012 was elevated into Victoria's Honour Roll of Women. Those awards were given by people with whom she had a close working relationship. Receiving those two meant a lot to Auntie Syl because of the community connections they represented. Auntie Syl was very philanthropic, but in a quiet way. She gave to so many institutions, but never wanted it known that she had done so. By the same token, when she had given large donations, she wanted to make sure that her hard-earned money went into something useful and not just administrative things. An example of this is the Alfred Hospital. The Alfred was one of her pet charities, but she would not give them money. She would ask them for a list of items that they needed, and she would purchase some of the items for the hospital. One of these items was a new invention from Europe, a pelvic clamp used to hold together a broken pelvis. One day, back in 2002, she received a phone call from the Alfred to tell her that her nephew, one Graham Solomon, had had a motorbike accident. "Ah," said Auntie Syl, "wrong, Graham Solomon. My nephew does not ride motorcycles." The staff at the Alfred read out the address from the driving licence of the patient, and she then had to admit that it was indeed her nephew. She quickly hailed a taxi and came into the Alfred, where she saw her nephew with his right arm in a cast and 2 metal bars protruding from his waist area. Auntie Syl said to the doctors, "That's the pelvic clamp that I bought for the hospital." A smile came to her face. She never let Graham forget that incident. In life, one is called upon to play in turn or simultaneously many roles. Auntie Syl played each role with grace and dignity, concern and empathy. In life, we cannot have everything, but Auntie Syl has shown you can cherish and be cherished for all the things you have done. So for David and Jackie, for me, Sue and for Graham, this is truly the end of an era. Auntie Syl was the last of her generation. And we thank you all for attending her funeral with us. Thank you.